Hey guys, this is GamerCow. Welcome to the final main video for the Pokemon TCG History series, because there isn't going to be an associated battle video with this one. After the very negative feelings we had towards the Shrouded Fable format, ultimately we've looked at this set and we've seen there is just nothing here that is interesting at all. There is one new archetype, there's a couple of tweaks to old archetypes. Dragapult in particular at least gets a little bit better here, which is cool, but there's just nothing to really note, and we don't have data for the next set in terms of what is actually good and what isn't. The Sacramento has just finished at the time of recording this, to finish the day before, and so we don't have the backlog of data that we normally would have for this. So we would play the Stellar Crown format, but honestly, the game is not in a good enough state for us, as in our opinion, to want to play this right now. And there's a few factors for that. A lot of it is just like there hasn't been a particularly great new deck in a while, I suppose. Like Raging Bolt Ogerpon is probably the newest thing that's been actually kind of good, and realistically that's just a big dumb beat sticky sort of deck. It doesn't really matter that much. Fezandipity was an absolute mistake in the last set, I think. It has basically just meant that your board states can just be full of nothing, absolute junk that isn't even interesting per se. You would think that all of these EXs like Mew and Fez and Squawk and whatnot would have to be liabilities, but who cares, right? When it's all just ultra turbo prize race down sort of thing, it doesn't feel great at all. I know there are control decks that we have not touched, which makes it just even worse because they genuinely feel like they would just not be fun to play against at all or with, so why would we even bother? And these sets, like I said, do not contain very much at all. I am going to combine Stellar Crown and Surging Sparks. I'm going to be a bit more speculative, of course, on Sparks. But ultimately, this is all I have to show for it, and this is with being very generous on what I think is actually kind of good from Surging Sparks. These sets do not have a lot of good cards at all, and it doesn't really help the matter whatsoever. There's too much in this format that just feels bad. It's certainly not the worst format that we've ever had. There have been very many worse ones. Early Sword and Shield is a pretty good example of that. But it's not a time where I enjoy playing the game. And I will be going over a lot of the stuff that I have enjoyed playing in a separate video. So it's not as if I dislike the TCG now or anything. It just this era doesn't really do anything for me at the moment, and it's unfortunate, but it is the way things go. Stellar Crown as a whole is about 189 cards or something. It's a pretty small set, all things considered, and it's bloated massively. Both of these sets are, but it's bloated massively by Japanese starter deck imports. A huge example is the Lucario EX over here, and I have a whole separate tirade that I can go into on these. I feel like they are the worst way that you could introduce somebody into the game. I honestly do not understand at all the point of having a card like this, even at the most baseline. Okay, here's an EX to thing. It's why are we throwing them into the main sets in English? Is the other bit, right? Imagine that you get the 1 in 7, 1 in 8 chance of whatever it is to pull an EX Pokemon out of your pack, and it is this, which is objectively worse than almost every non-EX Pokemon as well. It just it's so stupid. I get that, hey, this teaches you about multi-prizes and stuff, but there has to be a better way. Even Yu-Gi-Oh! Has understood that giving people vanillas is not the way to go in the year 2024, right? And Yu-Gi-Oh! Is the most complicated thing in the world for a new player to get into. So yeah, it's just ridiculous. But you get things like the Reshiram over here as well. Like all of these like raw vanilla cards just don't do anything, and this set is bloated with a lot of stuff like that. The other big issue out of this one is mostly in Surging Sparks as well, of like the cards just don't really do much. There's a new mechanic in the Stellar Terastal type here, which is functionally the same as your original Terras that don't change your type, but they have an extra attack that is based on an actual gemstone, which is kind of cool. But that's the naming convention for them. But they all take like 3 different types of energy, so we're kind of going back to the amazing rare sort of thing here. But most of them aren't really good enough at their payoff here. So like Saraledge's Raging Amethyst is a really cool attack. 280 is a decent amount of damage on the stage 1, etc. But having to play 3 different types of energy just makes it not worth it compared to the first attack. So yeah, that's one of the huge problems. I'm not even going to be talking about half of the Terrestrial Pokemon in here because most of them just aren't even worth it. It's disappointing to say the least, but the mechanic itself does have a little bit of legs thanks to the overarching Terra archetype that we have up here, specifically for the colorless one, because Terrapagos is here. This is the start of the Indigo Disc DLC as far as the TCG goes, so Terrapagos finally makes its debut into the game, and well, its second attack is the one that does the whole Terra type thing, but it's useless, so whatever. 180 damage is cool, but it just doesn't really matter that it has a bit of a lockdown thing, because the opponent can just gust around it and that would be the end of it all. However, Terrapagos itself does have a whole archetype around it here. These the Terra focus mechanic here can be used in other stuff as well, but it's really designed for the colorless part of it here. So Terrapagos has Unified Beatdown, right? 2 colorless energy, double turbo is usually the way you pay for this, but in its own archetype, it's supposed to use colored energy, so you could use a second attack, whatever. 30 damage for each of your benched Pokemon, and you can't use it going second on your first turn. They did actually put a limiter on this one, and that might not make a lot of sense until you read the stadium card here. Area 0 Underdepths. If you have a Terra Pokemon in play, you can have up to 8 Pokemon on your bench. So that means that if you were to be able to get the Underdepths in play, say like Secret Box or something to search it, and then Terrapagos is your attacker for the turn, you would be able to do 240 potentially damage on the first turn of the game, which is kind of ridiculous, I would admit. So I can understand why they would put a limiter on this. The archetypes surrounding it, there's a bunch of stuff like the Noctowl actually works for Terra Pokemon specifically, not just colorless type, but a lot of these actually only work on colorless Pokemon. Fan Rotom over here, for example, is a 70 HP, so body pop and searchable, and it's a basic Pokemon. When you put it down like once during your first turn, you get to search your deck for up to 3 colorless Pokemon with 100 HP or less, put them into the hand. It is a hard once on this thing, so it can't like search itself, which is fine. And it's pretty good at getting the Noctowl, because the Noctowl also has 100 HP. But Noctowl works for Terra Pokemon in particular. It does not have to be colorless Pokemon. When you evolve into this thing and you have a Terra Pokemon in play, you can search your deck for 2 trainer cards, put them into the hand. That's right, it is a stage 1 Inteleon, which is absolutely bonkers. So this would be the sort of engine to play coming out of this set, but we already sort of know how this goes because we played Intel engines for absolutely ages in the actual TCG, like the history stuff, so we know how this goes, so we don't really need to rediscover this one, if you will. However, it is incredibly powerful for the actual deck itself, because being able to stream multiple copies of this down, getting every trainer card that you would need, you basically have your perfect turn 2 setup every time. If you can establish the Fan Rotom initially, then you're basically set. Assault Landing is also not to be discredited, by the way, if you are playing not double turbo energy. For a single energy it does 70 damage so long as there is a stadium card in play, otherwise it does nothing. But your Underdepths is going to be in play the majority of the time. 70 damage is obviously very powerful for sniping away opponents' evolving basics and whatnot, so yeah, this comes up a lot. It's actually very strong if you can have the energy for it. So there will be other decks that aren't necessarily DTE Terapagos that can play this type of thing and actually get a really strong attack turn one, which is disgusting. This is Jet Energy compatible, for example, so keep that in mind as you will. The actual colorless part does get a bit more support with the Bouffalon over here. This does see some play sometimes. It is 100 HP, so you would need to search it with either Nest Ball or the Rotom. And if you have at least one other Bouffalon in play, all of your basic colorless Pokemon take 60 less damage from the opponent's attacks. It doesn't stack, so it is a flat 60 reduction, but that means Terapagos effectively has 290 HP, which is ridiculous. Obviously, Bravery Charm exists as well, so you can make this thing as bulky as Palafin, or like the bigger Stage 2 EXs, which is just ridiculous, to be honest. The final part of the colorless package for Terra here is specifically this glass trumpet. It's not a grass thing, it's a colorless thing. This lets you choose up to 2 of your bench colorless Pokemon, attach your basic energy when you discard power to each of them, so long as you have a Terra Pokemon in play. So right now, of course, that's the Terapagos. That's the idea, is that you would have like 2 Terapagos on your bench or something, and you can trumpet, you can accelerate the 2 energy. It's very similar to Mirage Gate, but it's from the discard pile here, so you would need to dump them first, but that is completely doable. In the future, there is the Evolution stuff, which may actually matter for this, because EVEX, I believe, is also a Stellar Terra Pokemon, so it might actually be relevant there, because the Evolutions are all going for the Stellar Terra stuff this time. We'll see the Sylveon later on, because that's been released a bit earlier, but our next mini set is going to be featuring all of the rest of them, and they're fine. They're nothing too special, unfortunately, but we'll see. Maybe there's something there, and maybe somebody could crack the code, and that would be a really cool use for the Trumpet as well. Surging Sparks did give us the Terra Orb, so you can specifically search for a Terra Pokemon, put it into your hand. This will be useful for a decent number of decks, obviously. Stuff like Charizard could use it, the Dragapult could use it pretty well. Ogerpon is a Terra Pokemon, so you could easily get that as well. Most decks have got something that you could use that way, which is pretty good. But clearly this is designed for the new Stellar stuff as well. And again, maybe the Eevee deck could use it, I don't know. The other 2 Terra-specific things I want to note here are Briar, which is a prize cheating supporter card, so that's always a scary thing, right? If the opponent has exactly 2 prize cards remaining, your active Terra Pokemon can, or your Terra Pokemon can take 1 extra prize from the opponent's active Pokemon. So the reason this is scary is because you can manipulate the opponent's prizes with stuff like the Dusknoir, right? So you can, even if the opponent is trying to play around this, because we don't have like free prize swings and stuff nowadays, you can basically force the opponent onto 2 prizes at will, and then you just get to do basically whatever you want with it. You take the extra prize, right? Charizard can use this quite handily because they play Pidgeot. It's really scary. The actual useful card for older archetypes here is the Sparkling Crystal. This is an Aspect Tool card, so you can't play Prime Catcher with this, but it's really worth it for Dragapult especially. If the Terra Pokemon this is attached to uses an attack, it costs 1 less energy of any type. So yeah, minus Rainbow Energy sort of tool, which is really cool. Search this with Arven obviously is a powerful thing, and it makes the Dragon type Dragapult be able to use its attack for 1 of either of its energy types, which is really cool. This is the card that single-handedly makes Dragapult a much better deck, and it was already okay, but this makes it genuinely good, and that's cool to see. But it is not enough to justify doing the set when we've already played a Dragapult deck in the series as is. As far as the Pokemon go, I'm going to try and remember which ones are which, but honestly, almost all of these are Surging Sparks because Stellar Crown had nothing. I'll be real with you. The Pikachu EX is the poster child of Surging Sparks. This is an only 200 HP, but it is an Electric Terra Basic, so it replaces the Mewtwo EX that Miraidon decks were playing beforehand in order to activate Area Zero Under Depths. It does not have a retreat cost. No, actually, that's a lie. It does have a retreat cost. I thought it didn't, but I think that's the previous Pikachu, like the starter deck thing from Paldea Evolved or something. This one does have a retreat cost, but you can use Rescue Board and that would be totally fine. Its ability prevents it from being KO'd from full health. It's Focus Sash, literally. If it's at full HP, would be knocked out by damage from an attack, it goes to 10 HP instead. Its attack is also actually good if you can fuel it. For a Grass, a Lightning, and a Metal, getting real shining, amazing rare Raikou vibes there actually. It does 300 damage and discards 3 energy from this Pokemon. Will admit I thought it was all energy when I was first reading this, but no, it's just discard 3. So you can overcharge this if you want to as well, which is actually kind of relevant. Yeah, this card is probably best attacking in Lost Zone box, because Mirage Gate is really good for using this, but if you want to actually like use it in Miraidon, it is a really good retreat option, right? And it gives you the opportunity to overfill your bench, which is very useful for a deck that plays all of Squawkabilly, Mew, Pheasantipity, Luminion, Rotom V. I'm not even kidding, there's like all of those in the current build for it. It's actually kind of ridiculous. The other thing that you can do with Pikachu if you want to go a bit more self-destructive on it is you can play Magneton over here. This is a 100 HP lightning type Pokemon with the Overvolt Discharge ability. Pretty cool name. You KO the Magneton and attach up to 3 basic energy from your discard pile to your lightning Pokemon in any way that you like. So clearly you give up a prize for this, but you can fuel the Pikachu in 1 turn and take the stuff from there. Also, Pikachu being a Terra Pokemon, this means you can manipulate the opponent down to 2 prizes, do the Briar thing. You get the point. It's kind of annoying. So, yeah, this card is obviously pretty good elsewhere as well. Being able to accelerate energy is always quite strong. And, I mean, if your Iron Hands takes 3 prizes on the opponent because you got to Overvolt Discharge to it to charge up and amp you very much in 1 turn, I don't think you're going to mind giving the opponent an extra prize. The thing is, like, Counter Catcher, and we'll actually see it down here, Counter Gain has come back as well in the Surging Sparks set. So, like, these cards are already designed to work when the opponent is ahead on prizes. So, being able to, at will, manipulate that is incredibly powerful. And when it's for this sort of energy acceleration, yeah, it's good. I have been informed that this Togekiss from Surging Sparks actually is in the Golden Go deck that top cut Sacramento, which is absolutely stupid, to be completely honest with you. If the opponent's active is KO'd, you flip a coin, and if heads, you take an extra prize card. It can't stack, you can only have 1 of these at a time, but like, what are we doing right now? You know, how does this card get designed, but then B, how does this even see play? Is absolutely ridiculous, to be honest with you. But I mean, hey, taking an extra prize card is a good thing, right? So I suppose I can see why, but like, freaking hell, dude, what is this format if like this is what we're actually playing here? Slacking EX is a bit of a perspective one from Surging Sparks. This has a gigantic 340 HP. You'd hope it would be big for a Stage 2 EX. And it does 280 damage for 2 energy. Does have to discard 1 of them, but I think you're totally fine with that. The catch is that if the opponent doesn't have any EX or Pokemon V in play, it can't attack, which is usually not a downside, but sometimes I guess it could come up, especially in like evolving decks like that don't initially put them down. Thinking God of War, doesn't always have like EXs down until way late in. They could maybe Turo the Gardevoir EX after they've used it as well, so you could get messed up by that. In general, stage 2 decks are the biggest issue for this guy, because his damage caps out below their threshold, and usually double turbo energy is what you'd be using to pay for this, so that makes it 260, which means even stage 1s might survive it as well. So there are some challenges to this thing. It might just be big enough that it's okay though. Sharon's Care can get played with this, for example, so it could just get picked up, and like the counter gain or something that's attached to it could as well. So there's definitely ways this could work out. I'm just not sure if it will, but that's why it's perspective. One that isn't perspective though is Latias CX. This is a 210 HP Psychic basic Pokemon, and it's not a Terra one, so it can actually get hit on the bench, and that can matter sometimes, but it gives all of your basic Pokemon in play 0 retreat. We have seen this ability is insane before because we played it on a stage 1, and that should show you how strong this actually is. Its attack, I guess, maybe could come up, but probably won't, because you probably don't play this in a deck that could actually fuel it. 200 is not really something you're looking for free energy, so kind of whatever. It's funny that it has a retreat cost, but that's solely because if the ability gets blocked, then it doesn't get to retreat for free. Latias usually only has a 1 retreat too. This one's a bit bigger than than you'd expect, but it's just because of the ability here. This is what gives the Pikachu 0 retreat if you play this in the sort of Lost Zone deck, or the even Miraidon type of thing can use it, and it's very, very powerful. Any basic centric deck would love having this effect in play. It's really good. The Galvantula line unfortunately didn't do that much, but I'm still going to put it up here anyway because I need some representation from Stellar Crown, I'll be honest with you. The Joltik is only 30 HP, but it has probably the strongest acceleration attack I have ever seen on a basic Pokemon. For a single colorless energy, you search your deck for up to 2 basic grass and up to 2 basic lightning energy and attach them across your board in any way that you like. This is probably one of the biggest things that you could get in the draft format at this sort of point, because this guy, like, accelerating 4 energy into play it's just ridiculous. Like, my perspective draft stuff, I've been using Cleffa in like every deck at the moment because it's just kind of insane being able to draw a bunch of extra cards and whatnot, but accelerating 4 energy, that's just ludicrous. It's designed to work with a Galvantula. It's a 260 HP Stellar Terror that has a couple of decent attacks here. It's just expensive to use the second one. For a Lightning and the colorless, Charged Web does 110, double that to 220 if the opponent's active is an EX or a Pokemon V. So that's kind of neat. It's not too difficult to power up, right? And it's a good amount of damage. You've got the Stellar Terror part here, so you can have the extra bench on Area 0, and it's in Lightning, so you can search the basic with Miraidon. It's kind of cool. Fulgurite does 180 damage for a Grass, Lightning, and Fighting energy. You have to discard all those energy, which is gross, but the opponent is item locked in their next turn, which is equally gross. So yeah, this card's kind of cool. It's only got a 1 retreat too, so it's rescue board compatible. That's pretty fun. And Charge Web is efficient, if nothing else, but I think it's just a little bit too low in terms of power, because 220 is good, but it doesn't even KO like a Raging Bolt, so when they can just KO you back immediately, it just doesn't like quite get there. But item lock is gross, and if you could somehow fuel that enough, yeah, it's pretty good. Mr. Joe Bernard is going to hate me for even mentioning this one, but a lot of people are quite high on the Hydreigon EX at the moment. I know Mahone and Azul have been actually surprisingly up on this one. It's a free 30 HP Stage 2 Dark Stellar Terror. Say that 5 times fast, right? It has a couple of good attacks. For a Dark and a Colorless, it does 200 and discards the top 3 cards of the opponent's deck. I think you could make that somewhat of a win con. It doesn't quite do enough damage to KO anything really, but like the milling of the opponent's stuff is actually kind of nasty, and unlike Chi-Yu, this is significantly bulkier, so you'd actually be able to do more than just one attack with it, right? Obsidian is the main attack here, and it is a doozy. It's kind of like the old Berserk Blade, I think it was called, or whatever the original Hydreigon's attack was called, and the Pokemon Break version of it had as well. It's a Psychic Dark Metal Colorless attack here, not even content with being free energy on this, right? Just ridiculous. 130 damage and snipe 130 to 2 of the opponent's bench. That reads ridiculous, and normally I'd be all over this. The problem is, you read that little rule box that's at the top of this card. As long as this Pokemon is on your bench, prevent all damage done to this Pokemon by attacks, both yours and the opponent's. This is on every Terra Pokemon, and a lot of the Pokemon that get played nowadays are Terra Pokemon. Not all of them, obviously, but a very large majority of them are. And that means that you do not have good targets. You can't hit everything that you would want to hit. That Pikachu, for example, if it retreats to the bench on 10 HP, you can't kill it with Obsidian, even if Manaphy's not in play. And stuff like that just makes it very difficult to justify this. But I have seen the crazy YouTube replay stuff. I could see this happening at some stage, but I'm not convinced. I want to see it at a tournament before I am convinced by this deck. Diancie, I've been told, is actually pretty good against Lugia. Single colorless energy, it does 40 for each special energy attached to all of the opponent's Pokemon. It is a fighting type too, which is somewhat relevant for the way the current Lugia is played, because they tend to play lightning attackers and like the colorless Weirdeer. So it actually hits for weakness too. They don't even need that much energy in play. It's kind of cool. Also hits Blood Moon Ursaluna, which is useful against him too. I'm going to prospectively put the Archaludon stuff here. This Archaludon was in Stellar Crown, and it gives all of your Pokemon with Metal Energy attached to them 0 retreat, which is pretty cool. 180 HP on a non-EX Stage 1 is actually really high too. Kind of works with the Duraludon over here too. This for 2 metal and the colorless does 80 plus 10 for each damage counter that's on this thing. Like, its own HP is quite low, but because Relicanth exists and gives you pre-evolution attacks and stuff, the gigantic 300 HP on this EX from Surging Sparks actually lets it kind of work pretty well. So that's cool. The Assemble Alloy ability when you evolve into the Archaludon lets you attach up to 2 basic metal from your discard pile to your metal Pokemon in any way that you like. So it's kind of like a budget Charizard, if you want to think about it that way, where it doesn't accelerate energy from the deck, but it does let you get energy back at all times, which is pretty cool. And it does take 3 metal energy itself in order to attack here, which is kind of annoying. 220 damage, no weakness next turn. Fire decks are not too good right now, with the exception of Ceruledge that we'll talk about in a sec, but Ceruledge itself might just be a good nothing for this attack to be relevant. You can use Professor Turo with this card very easily, since the energy would get discarded, but you just evolve into a new Archaludon and get the acceleration back up. So Turo lets you recycle this pretty well. And obviously if they do give you some damage, you could play the Relicanth and then Raging Hammer for probably 300 plus damage. It's kind of fun. Speaking of the Ceruledge, the Stellar Terra Fire type over here has 270 HP. We've gone over Raging Amethyst already, but Abyssal Flames is actually a really good attack in its own right. This does 30 for a single fire, but it does 20 more for each energy in your discard pile. There are good ways of getting a bunch of energy in the discard that we will be talking about as far as the A-specs go this time around. And yeah, for a stage 1, it can do one-shot numbers and be very slightly bulkier than the basic stuff, which is sort of cool. It's a little bit more self-sufficient too. It's kind of like Goldengo that way, where it only takes 1 energy to do its thing, so that's cool. Doesn't have a draw ability like Goldengo though, so might end up being a bit weaker because of that. But hey, it hits Goldengo for weakness, that might matter for something. And then finally, I'm going to throw the Chien-Pao in here solely because the Pumpkaboo that had the same effect as this before was actually amazingly strong in the Gen 8 format. When you put this from your hand to your bench during your turn, you can discard a Stadium card in play. The Pumpkaboo did the same thing and was like intensely good, right? It was played in all sorts of stuff. This is Irida searchable, which is pretty good, so that kind of gets around the issue of being Nest Ball as our main, like, you know, Mon search sort of thing right now. You do have a supporter card that you could use to search this. It also only has a 1 retreat, the Pumpkaboo had 2, and it has a little bit more HP, so it can survive Rotom at the very least, which the Pumpkaboo would not have been able to do. That was only 60 HP. So yeah, I think there's a little bit of potential for this thing, so I'm going to throw it up here anyway. Trainer card wise, it's mostly A-Specs that are interesting this time. Stellar Crown had like maybe 10 trainers total, and we've already gone over half of them in the bit at the top, so let's just go through the other ones here. Brilliant Blender is from Surging Sparks and is a mega version of Battle Compressor. Search your deck for up to 5 cards and discard them. Very cool card, probably will see play somewhere at some point. I'm not sure if Ceruledge plays this or if it actually plays the next one, Energy Search Pro. It might just play the Blender, but Energy Search Pro is mostly, like, it's used in Goldengo. It might be used in Ceruledge, I haven't looked well enough. Search your deck for any number of basic energy cards of different types. Reveal them, put them into your hand. So Goldengo, of course, if you recall, needs to discard energy from your hand in order to do 50 damage per energy. It does not have to be a particular type. The Goldengo only needs 1 metal energy to do its Make It Rain attack, so this can let you search for 6, 7, even 8 energy in one turn, and just be able to make it rain with all of that. And then you do the superior energy retrieval loops and everything is perfectly fine. Really, really strong card. Arven searchable, obviously, as most A-Specs are. And yeah, it's just really powerful. Precious Trolley is every meme deck maker's dream, I will say, but I think this card actually has some legs otherwise too. You search your deck for any number of basic Pokemon and put them onto the bench. That's it. It's a 1-card search 5. Yeah, it's just as dumb as it sounds. Arven obviously is incredible with this, because Arven for Trolley plus Sealstone means you can immediately get like a search 1 of anything else in the deck as well. Just bonkers stuff there. But yeah, any deck using multiple stage 2s could consider this, just so they can get everything they need out turn 1 immediately. Really, really strong card. This is like Hyper Aroma, but for the better part of the deck. Scramble Switch returns, one of my favourite cards from Gen 5, to be honest with you. Didn't get to play it as often as I would have liked, because it took a very particular deck to use it, and I think it's going to be the same here, but I just love it, so I've got to put it here anyway. If you're unfamiliar, it's a switch, literally, but when you do that switch, you get to move any number of energy from the Pokemon you shifted to the bench onto your new active Pokemon. So this lets you basically not quite fully heal around him, but it's like, it's energy mobility. This is energy switches, but also better. It's more like multi-switch, to be honest, where, because you can move special energy with this as well, and then you could freely pick up or full heal somehow the Pokemon on the bench. Normally those effects will discard the energy that's attached to them, so this lets you get around that. It's probably not going to see play this time, because there's like 500 different A-Specs that are really good right now, but this is still a really solid card to have around. Crispin has been seeing a decent bit of play as a one-of here and there. This searches your deck for 2 basic energy of different types, reveals them, puts 1 into hand, and attaches the other 1 to your Pokemon. In any way that you like, basically, whichever Pokemon you want. It can be the active as well. This is pretty good at fueling the Stellar stuff. I think that's what it's mostly supposed to be for. It's funny that it's not a bit more of a dedicated fire support, given that it's Crispin, but you know. This is really good for Dragon types, is the best one. So really, this should have been like Drayton, but Drayton's got his own card, you can see down there. Yeah, it's a very strange one. I don't know. But it's a cool card nonetheless. Being able to get two different energy out and being able to accelerate one immediately and then just attach the other one, that's good. Supporter card based energy acceleration has very often been super strong. And this is not the strongest version of it we've ever seen, but a free energy search plus the attach from deck is still really good. Especially because of all of these stellar costs and stuff are a bit nuts, right? So, yeah. Grand Tree has a Yu-Gi-Oh! Sized wall of text on it, but functionally, what it does is that the turn player can search for. It's like the old Ral Alone and Executor thing. They can search for a stage 1 that evolves from one of their basics, and then if they do that, they can also then search for the stage 2 that evolves from that stage 1 and put it into play immediately. You cannot do this on your first turn or on a basic that was put to play that turn. This does not break the evolution rule in terms of, like, you know, Forest of Giant Plants type thing, but this does allow you to go, like, turn 1 bench a Pidgey, turn 2 go Grand Tree, evolve to Pidgeotto, and then immediately to Pidgeot. So that's pretty cool. The catch is the opponent can do the same, but I will be honest with you, a lot of Stage 2 decks don't actually play their Stage 1s right now. Because Item Lock it technically exists, but Item Lock functionally isn't in the game right now. Because none of the Item Lock stuff is, like, actually good. I think Banette is the closest that we've got that's good, and that isn't really that impressive. So most Stage 2s don't actually play the stage 1, or if they do, it's like one copy, right? You might see like a free 1/2 Charizard or something, and so a lot of the times this will just be kind of free. The big problem with this is it doesn't have any protection effect, so like the opponent can just put another stadium in play and just bounce it, which is unfortunate. I mentioned Counter Game briefly earlier, but just in case you forgot what it does, if you are behind on prizes, the Pokemon this is attached to has to pay 1 colorless less to attack, so this can be pretty useful in some decks that have colorless components. Right now, a lot of them don't, which is weird. Like, Drago has 2 grass and a fire, right? Charizard is pure fire. The Raging Bolt is grass light fight. No, it's lightning fighting. It plays the grass energy for the Ogerpon, right? Ogerpon itself is triple grass energy, so that doesn't really work. But this could be really good for Terapagos as a way of, oh, I'm a bit behind on what I want to do. Let me just attack for a single energy this turn instead, right? So, it's a cool card. It will probably see play at some point because it's a tool, it's easily searchable with Arven, and yeah, it's just worth it. And then finally, for the main part here, there is Gravity Gemstone. This is a Stellar Crown card, and it makes the Pokemon in the active pay 1 more to retreat, so long as it is on the active Pokemon. So, it's a control-based card. I think maybe Gardevoir plays it a little bit as well, because they can just accelerate a second energy to retreat their 1 retreat mon or something, right? So Gardevoir, I think, can play it and doesn't really care, but it's mostly a control card, which it's not the most egregious one out there for sure. If it worked on the bench as well, then it would be really stupid, but thankfully it doesn't. So, and if the opponent is like really stumped by this, Lost Vacuum exists. So yeah. So that's it for what I think is the main sort of useful stuff here. On to the memes slash like draft GLC-ish sort of things, you know. Hydrapple EX is definitely the deck I would have played if we were actually playing this round, because this card looks really fun. It is a stage 2, it's a free 30 HP Grass type EX, but Grass type's got some really good support in Twilight Masquerade, so that kind of helps it out a little bit. They've got like double Great Ball for energy and Grass Pokemon, kind of nuts, right? Ripening Charge allows you to, once per turn, attach a basic grass energy from hand to one of your Pokemon, and if you do, you heal 30 from that Pokemon. The heal might matter if you've taken a hit with a Hydrapple or something, but most of the time the heal is not the relevant bit here. Syrup Storm is the attack of choice, and for 2 colorless energy, you're never going to pay colorless for this, I'll just tell you that right now. 30 plus 30 for each grass energy across your board. So Think about it this way. We have Teomask Ogopon that will accelerate energy to itself every turn to draw cards. We have this that can accelerate additional energy into play. Maybe gets a heal, but the point is just to get more in play, right? And it is very easy to see that, oh, suddenly I could be using this and attaching 6-7 energy per turn to my Pokemon. 8 energy if you get 3 Hydro Apples in play or something, right? And then Syrup Storm is doing 270 without even having any prior attachments or something, right? It also is a grass type, so it hits Charizard for weakness. That is, it's a meme, obviously, that, oh, everything kills Charizard, it's great, but it's like, it's actually genuinely useful here because it means that you don't have to fully explode before you just beat that deck, right? And 330 HP is still difficult for the Zard to reach, so yeah, it's kind of cool. Yeah, this deck seems like it'd be really fun because the Ogerpon's constantly drawing stuff as well is great. Area Zero Underdepths, I forget if Mahone played that, but like, yeah, that would be really strong too because the Ogerpon is a Terra Pokemon, right? So you could do lots of fun stuff with that, and it just seems really cool. The big disadvantage is like Applin has got 40 HP, but who cares? It'll be a fun deck. So there you go. One for the draft, I think, could be Iron Boulder. This is from Stellar Crown, so it's kind of neat. And it requires you to have the same number of cards in your hand as the opponent. But it only takes a Psychic and a Colorless Energy to do 170 damage, which is nuts. At my perspective, like my test draft stuff at the moment, I've gone through Temporal Forces, and there is actually one of the drafts that's got a future deck available. I don't think there were Crown. No, I think there might have been an Iron Crown in there as well. But it's like this could be really strong if you could match the opponent's hand size. Now against decks that like overflow their hand and stuff, you really will need to play a bunch of Judge for that. And well, my drafts don't have a lot of Judge, but that's okay. I think you could definitely still do something with this. 170 is enough to KO a ton of stuff in draft format. So yeah, pretty cool. The Evolution EX that we have at the moment is Sylveon. This is a Psychic Stellar Terror, because Fairy type, Boo, Hiss, etc. It is weak to Metal at the very least, so it's not Dark weak like all the other ones. Magical Charm for a Psychic and Double Colorless does 160, and during the opponent's next turn, if the defending Pokemon attacks you, it does 100 less damage. That is the worst possible way that you could do a reduction effect ever, and it makes this completely worthless, except Angelite is actually okay. It's a Water Lightning Psychic cost, so it is really expensive, but it lets you shuffle 2 of the opponent's bench Pokemon and all cards attached to them into the deck. It's like PleGX. Except this one can technically be used multiple times in the game because if one of your... it only prevents you from using it in consecutive turns. It does not prevent you from using it more than once in a game. If this had a better first attack, or if this wasn't quite such a ridiculous cost to get charged up, I could see this happening. I could maybe see if the Evolution deck does somehow take off, and you can use like the Glass Trumpet and stuff to accelerate the EVEXs, I could maybe see this actually being played, because that shuffle effect is unbelievably stupid. I don't know if we're going to get to that point though, but imagine going Collapse Stadium, your 8-card bench is now 4 cards, and then Angelite remove the 2 best attacker stuff from their bench, and suddenly like the opponent's on 2 bench, they've not got anything in play. You didn't KO anything last turn, so they can't fez or whatnot. It's kind of nuts, right? That's the idea. Azumarill, also from Surging Sparks. I actually really like this card, but I can understand it would not be very good for tournament play. But draft, this looks really promising. It's only 120 HP, but it is a Psychic type, so I guess you've got something going for you there, right? If you have any Terra Pokemon in play, Double Edge only costs a single Psychic. So instead of 4 Psychic, it's 1 Psychic for 230 and do 50 to yourself. Yeah, you're definitely dying next turn, but 230 is ungodly strong. and I think this actually could have a place in draft stuff. It's just really powerful, right? 1 energy, stage 1, 230, really good. If you get Hyper Aroma in your draft, then this could just go hard, right? I didn't check how much HP the Marl had, though. If the Marl's got 80 HP, I don't think it will, but if it does, then that's a bit of a downside as well, you know. Rotom maybe could actually be considerable in the meta part because of the control decks, but I don't think they play Lightning Energy right now, so I'm not too convinced on that. It's an 80 HP single prizer for 1 Lightning. It can do some damage, but who cares? It's about Crushing Pulse here. The opponent reveals their hand and you discard all items and all tool cards that you find there. Yikes! So yeah, this is pretty devastating. Discarding them, not just putting them to the bottom of the deck too. They don't get to reuse those, so yikes. This could be really good against control stuff as well, potentially, because you could use it to stun them. Control decks tend to want to amass a lot of resources in hand, right? And this could be one way of getting around that in Miraidon if it really ends up being an issue. I don't know, it's cool. Cinderace was the big Stage 2 headline Stella from Stella Crown itself, and it's not very good, I'm afraid. I like this Pokemon, but it's terrible here. It's a free 20 HP Fire-type Stella, and for a Fire and double colors, it does 280, can't do that in consecutive turns. That's like kind of neat, I suppose. It KOs V-Stars and whatnot, but it doesn't have a retreat cost at least, so you could retreat out, which is fun. Garnet Volley for a Fire Fighting Darkness snipes 180 on one of the opponent's Pokemon. I mean, I guess that's cool for taking out a Mew or Squawkabilly or something, but no, just no. It's so hard to get that kind of energy attached, and that's really what it comes down to. Fire also just doesn't have a particularly good acceleration suite right now. Magma Basin is the best thing for it, really. And, like, at that point, just play Gouging Fire. It's just so much more consistent, you know? Skeledirge is kind of cool. I think this could be decent for draft, to be honest, because there's the Fire... there's the 2 EXs, actually, but the Steel Stella... the Steel Terra one is the one I would consider here because it's got a good damage buffing part to this. It's 180 HP stage 2 and it's unaffected by effects of attacks used by the opponent's Pokemon, so I guess that's kind of neat. It means that it can't get damage countered by Dragapult when it's at this stage, so that's fun. Torchetto is a very fun sounding attack. It's Fire and a Colorless, it does 60 plus 20 for each bench Pokemon in play. So it takes advantage of the fact that like Area 0 Underdepths is kind of cool for a lot of this stuff. And it's Palkia's attack, right? But it's Palkia on a Stage 2 1 prizer as opposed to a quote-unquote Stage 1 2 prizer. It's fine. It's pretty reasonable, but fine doesn't really cut it for the main game. But again, for draft, I think this could be perfectly acceptable, and so I'd consider it for that. Quaquaval fits into the established Quaquaval deck stuff fairly well. There's the Scarlet Violet base set Quaquaval that accelerates the basic energy from your hand once per turn, which is pretty fun. The EX is particularly powerful early on. It's probably a bit too weak at this point, but it's still 230 damage for 2 energy, returns them to the hand, so that's kind of fun. And this one draws until you have 5 cards in your hand once per turn. Why we had to print a weaker version of Octillery, I don't know. This should draw until 6, that's what Stage 2s have already done with this, and that's why I would never even consider it for normal play. But if you have this in draft, then it could actually be pretty respectable. At this stage, however, you should already have Revavooms, so I would not play this just for itself, but if you wanted to play Quaquaval EX still, it's not a bad way of doing it. Gouging Fire is also kind of fun. 130 HP Ancient single prize Pokemon, and I think its biggest issue is the fact that it's in Fire rather than the other. But then again, the Koraidon also works with Fire too, so if you're not playing the Roaring Moon side, which you might not be because you don't have Dark Patch. It's kind of cool. 100 damage for 2 fire and a colorless, and if the opponent has 4 or fewer prize cards remaining, it does 70 more. 170 for free in an archetype that can accelerate some energy from the discard pile. It's pretty neat. This was apparently like the absolute meta breaker in pre-releases, because pre-releases play with 4 prize cards as the default. So yeah, this is always doing 170, which is just, again, like single prize just breaker, right? So kind of funny. There's a bunch of trainer cards, mostly from Surging Sparks, because that's where most of them exist from, that are sort of worth going over, but probably won't see like main series play, so let's just go over them here. Dusk Ball is returning from Generation 4. It's Great Ball, but it's from the bottom of the deck instead. Look at the bottom 7, reveal a Pokemon you find there, put them into hand. One of the cool things about this now, compared to other times, is that nowadays we often bottom deck a fair few things via the likes of Iono, right? And that could be kind of neat. Like if your opponent Ionos you and you end up drawing into a Dust Ball before you have to search for something else, that's cool, right? You get to take one of the Pokemon that you were really hoping to keep in the hand and put it back. So kind of fun. Not good enough to see actual play, but again, potential draft type stuff. Although, again, at this point, 4 Nest Ball, 4 Ultra Balls should be expected because we've had the reprint set quite a while ago. So maybe it's not even good enough there, I don't know, but I like it anyway. Megaton Blower is the massive upgrade to Startling Megaphone. It discards all tools, all special energy, and a stadium card that's in play from the opponent's side. The stadium can be your stadium, for the record, so you could discard your own Collapse Stadium if you want to, but the tools and special energy are only from the opponent's side. It's, I think, even Giacomo is not as powerful as this bit, but it's effectively like a Giacomo plus Startling Megaphone type thing, and just to, you know, put a cherry on top, it's the, oh, what was the card? It was like the paint. It was the paintbrushing, I think, that also discarded the stadium. Very interesting, but it's an A spec, so it has to compete with Prime Catcher or all of the other ones, and it doesn't really do that very favorably. Just like Miracle Headset. This is double Versus Seeker, puts 2 supporter cards in your discard pile into your hand. Absolutely busted effect, but it's on an A spec, and therefore it's competing with too many other ones that effectively do more than this. The thing with ones like this is I think the game is currently far too fast and far too turn 1 centric to be facilitating this sort of effect. Like, it doesn't matter that you can recover like 2 Sadas with this or something and have your like sustain for the rest of the game if that rest of the game doesn't happen because you didn't set up and the opponent did. That's what it comes down to right now. Supporter card wise, we have Cyrano, who searches your deck for up to 3 Pokemon EX, puts them into the hand. I normally wouldn't note this, but we did see Adventurer's Discovery eventually saw play, so there is a chance for this to see play at some point. I think the difference between the two is that Adventurer's Discovery could effectively search your basic as well as your stage 1, whereas this can only search for the top evolution, so probably won't see play, but you never know. There may be a situation where like a triple Nest Ball style thing is actually the important card, so there you go. Drayton looks at the top 7 cards of your deck, reveals a Pokemon and a trainer that you find there, and puts them into the hand. The rest get shuffled back in. They don't get bottom decked, which honestly might have actually made it better because Dust Ball synergy, but whatever. Card's fine. We see a bunch of these sorts of things come up from time to time. I don't think this one's going to see play. The supporter cards are very powerful at this stage, but again, you never know. It's worth noting just in case. Lycia's Appeal is terrible, but Boss's Orders has only had 1 print in this era, and one of my drafts actually does not have Boss's Orders. So regrettably, I think I have to note this one anyway. This gusts in one of the opponent's benched basic Pokemon to the active spot. If you do, it confuses that Pokemon, but like, who the hell cares, right? Effectively, this is just worse boss. It gusts in only a basic Pokemon, and so you can't hit the Pidgeots, you can't hit Dragapult on the bench or something, right? It only gets the basics. The one plus side for this, and the reason why it could be good in draft, is because a lot of the cards you want to hit, the bench sitters, are basics. So like Fez and Difty, so like Mew and Squawkabilly. These sorts of ones do tend to get played quite a bit, and they will be targets for this. But it means that you can't ever deal with most decks' main attackers. So it still sucks, but there you go. Surfer technically could actually see some genuine play. I think these next three kind of could, the last three that we have here, but I'm not confident enough in them to say that they will see play. Surfer switches your active Pokemon with one of your benched, and if you do, you draw until you have 5 cards in your hand. So it's like the old Bird Keeper. Obviously a little bit worse because it's not likely to draw you as many cards, but it is another supporter-based switch out in the anti-control sort of setup, right? Sometimes it actually pays to have this kind of effect where you have your switch card be on a supporter. We're not in an item lock heavy format, as I mentioned earlier, so it might not ever come up in that aspect right now, but you never know, and so I appreciate having the card around. The last two are Stadium cards, both from Surging Sparks. Most of these cards have been, to be fair. They give Pokemon more or less HP depending on the stage of evolution. Stage 2 Pokemon with Gravity Mountain in play have 30 less HP. Why? I don't know, but that's just how it is. And Lively Stadium, if you have a basic Pokemon, it gains 30 HP. So I don't like these on principle, obviously. I really don't like promoting this basic heavy exclusive line type thing, right? And punishing the stage 2s for being stage 2s doesn't sit well with me at all, right? Granted, I can kind of see the lack of like a choice band equivalent in this format is a little bit annoying. You have to play the A spec to get up to KO numbers on your stage 2 EXs, and that doesn't really work for most decks. But I don't like this as a solution. What I will say, Gravity Mountain is actually a potential consideration for a Pikachu-based deck, because Pikachu hitting 300 also doesn't hit these Stage 2 EXs and whatnot, but then you can just play a Gravity Mountain down and the 330 HP goes down to 300 and you score the KO that way. So you can even manipulate it so that you score the KO on the particular turn you want as well, if the opponent doesn't Turo immediately, right? So it's very possible. I don't think the Lively Stadium is going to see any play, partly because Area 0 Underdepths is just way better, but also because this can be used in the opposite direction against you, right? I could see it if you are like Bravery Charm plus this in like a Raging Bolt deck or something, but the problem is Pokestop exists. Another Gen 8 mistake, by the way. Pokestop just is way stronger than this. So I don't think that this one's going to see any play, but the Mountain in like a Lost Zone Pikachu deck or something maybe could. But even there, I don't think it does, because I think you just manipulate with like Sableye or something and just make it better. So that's why they're in this little off-meta type section down here. Overall, these sets are terrible. I know, I realize I've spent like an hour sort of going over the stuff with it here. That's just how it be. If you've not seen any of this series before, well, this is basically what all of them are like, because I like to talk about cards. But there's not much here that's like even worth playing. Like, I want to say the set here, Surging Sparks, is like 260 cards or something. This is over 100, just over 180, and collectively there's about 50 40, not even 50 cards here. It's depressing, to be honest, because there's like 14 in this one, 18 down here. There's maybe 40 cards that are worth noting out of all of that, which is just crazy. I realize the total set numbers do count your alternate arts and whatnot, but that's still just a dismally low amount. So, yeah, not really much to say. As far as the series goes, as I mentioned, this is the end of the main part for this. I do have one other thing planned, however, which is going to be a humongously long project. It's going to take me ages to record, but I have so many decks that I have massively enjoyed when playing this series. And so what I want to do as the finale is I want to go over a lot of the stuff that I played. This might not load very well because, you know, there's a lot of cards within the vid here. But I have 60 individual decks that I have really loved in this series, from the very first set all the way up until like Twilight Masquerade. And I want to basically go over all of that in a separate thing. So that is going to be the true finale, but that is also going to take a very long time to record and produce. So if that is of interest, I will hopefully have that out at some point before the end of the year. But beyond that, that is the history series done. If you have somehow made it through all of this, thank you very much for watching. I hope you understand why we don't want to play this set as well, but hopefully you've had a good time with this as well. It's been a heck of a trip through these last several years doing this bit here. I did not actually think we would even make it halfway through this, I'll be honest, but I guess I underestimated the perseverance of my co-players with this. I don't know what else to really say with it. I just say thank you very much for watching, and I think we are actually eventually loading up here. I did hear the sound of it, stuff over that. Again, there's like several thousand cards within the bit here. No matter what computer you've got, it still is going to take a long time to try and load this many objects. Tabletop Sim was not designed to have thousands of individual objects at the same time, I don't think, loaded in. So yeah, it's one of those things. Yeah, again, there it's finally showing up. You can see, yeah, that's how much it actually has to load each time going through as well. It's kind of ridiculous, but I just wanted to show the brief idea with this as we go. There is so much here that I have massively enjoyed. I can't have all the decks displayed as is here because it's just too much for one program to handle. But there are so many different sets that have had a ton of amazing decks that I have massively enjoyed playing. From every era, there is at least a few things in every generation that I have liked. Even Generation 8, I still have a fair few decks that I have liked playing as well. And yeah, Generation 9 might not be even like halfway done yet, it feels like, but there's still been several decks in here as well that I have enjoyed. So like I said, I will do my best to get that out before the end of the year, but when it comes out, we'll have one grand retour of the history of the TCG, and it'll be fun. So until then, thank you very much for the like 60th time for watching stuff here, and I will see you in another video in the future. Take care.